When Ava Johnson, 17 years old, stepped into one of Los Angeles's most exclusive restaurants to celebrate the moment she'd been working for her whole young life, she had no idea how the night would end. It was supposed to be a quiet personal victory, a solo dinner, a letter in her purse that changed everything. But that night, under the soft chandeliers and velvet chairs of Maison Elan, she was turned away, not because of what she did, but because of what they thought she wasn't. She didn't tell her father right away, not until later, not until the rain had started falling and the weight of the moment had settled in her chest like a bruise. That call, a simple, quiet conversation between a father and his daughter, would be the start of something far greater than either of them expected. Dwayne Johnson didn't raise his voice. He didn't post a tweet. He made a choice, one that would reshape an entire corner of the industry, one that would remind the world that dignity isn't earned by appearances. It's owed to every human being who walks through the door. What happened next didn't just affect one restaurant. It changed how people in power thought about who belongs and why. Ava stood on the sidewalk across from the restaurant for a long time before going in. Not because she was nervous. Not exactly. She was just still, soaking it in. The air was warm. Sunset was fading behind the hills. Traffic moved lazily down Sunset Boulevard, headlights flickering in the golden light. She could feel the letter in her purse. Not thick, not flashy, just a folded piece of paper that meant the world. Dear Ava Johnson, we are pleased to inform you. She had read it 5 times in the Uber on the way over. Stanford, full academic ride, for writing. Not sports, not acting, just her words. She wasn't dressed to impress. That was the point. She wore a soft lavender dress she'd bought herself at a boutique in Studio City, paired with clean white sneakers. Her curls were free. Her only makeup was a little gloss. To everyone passing by, she probably looked like any other high schooler out for a meal. But to her, it felt like the biggest night of her life. She had chosen Maison Elan for a reason. She didn't want glitz. She wanted a place that symbolized success, quiet, elegant, timeless, a place where important people gathered. Tonight, she thought, she was one of them. The foyer of Maison Elan smelled like polished mahogany and truffle oil. Soft jazz played in the background. Ava stepped through the door, her shoulders back, her chin up, like her father taught her. The maitre d' stood behind a tall podium, older, thin. His gray suit was immaculate, his smile fixed in that polite way that never quite reached the eyes. Ava smiled warmly. Hi, I have a reservation for one. Ava Johnson, 7 o'clock. His fingers hovered over the screen. Click, scroll, pause. Ava noticed his eyes lift, slowly, taking in her sneakers, her lack of makeup, the absence of a parent or bodyguard. The silence stretched too long. Then the smile returned. I'm sorry, miss. I'm not seeing anything under that name. Ava's brow furrowed slightly. She reached into her purse. I have the confirmation right here. He raised a hand. Unfortunately, we're at capacity tonight. Perhaps you booked a different location. She glanced behind him. The dining room was only half full. No, this is the one, she said gently. Sunset Boulevard. I made it online, through the website. He didn't check again. He didn't ask to see her phone. Instead, he leaned forward slightly. There's a really nice place down the block. More casual, burger and fries kind of vibe. You might like it. That smile was still on his face. The kind of smile that people wear when they're saying no without saying it. The kind that makes it clear, you're not one of us. Not because of how you act, because of how you look. Ava stood there for a moment, just long enough to feel the heat in her cheeks, just long enough to notice a couple behind her being ushered in. No reservation, she overheard. They wore tailored jackets, expensive shoes, slick watches. The maitre d' greeted them like old friends. Welcome back. Table by the window again? Ava nodded slowly. Thank you, she said, turning back toward the door. The maitre d' didn't respond. He was already laughing at something the other guests said. Outside, the sun had dipped completely. The night air was cooler now, and the sidewalks were glistening faintly from a light mist that had started to fall. Ava walked. Not fast, not slow, just forward. She could feel the letter in her bag, but for the first time all day, it didn't feel like a victory. She didn't cry. She wouldn't give them that. But inside, something cracked. Not because she was fragile, not because she was weak, but because the world had reminded her, in the gentlest, most polite way possible, that it still didn't always see her. Even with all her work, even with all her merit, even with Dwayne Johnson for a father. The lights in Ava's bedroom were dim. Just the soft amber glow of her bedside lamp filled the space, casting slow-moving shadows along the white walls, where a few handwritten quotes were pinned. Tell your story before someone tells it for you. Strong women raise stronger women. You don't need to be loud to be heard. She lay on top of the covers, her lavender dress still on, the hem wrinkled now from walking. Her sneakers had been kicked off near the door. One of them was still wet from the light rain outside. On the nightstand, her phone buzzed quietly. A text. Dad, how was dinner? Did you get dessert? She stared at the screen. Her thumb hovered over the reply box. She could lie. Just type, great, thanks again. That would be easier, cleaner. No explanation, no follow-up. But the weight on her chest hadn't moved. It was still there. That heavy, invisible bruise just beneath her ribs. She took a breath, then pressed the video call icon. The screen brightened, and within seconds, there he was. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, her dad, grinning in a black tank top, still damp from his late workout. Behind him, rows of dumbbells gleamed under the harsh lighting of his home gym. He had a towel over his shoulder and a protein shake in his hand. Hey, he boomed, smiling. There she is, my Ivy League superstar. Stanford, baby. Did they roll out the red carpet for you at dinner or what? Ava smiled back, but it was small. The kind that tries. He paused. His eyes scanned her face. The smile slipped. Not completely, but just enough for Ava to notice. He leaned in slightly, putting the shake down. What's going on, sweetheart? She shook her head. It's nothing. Just tired, I guess. He didn't say anything at first, just looked at her, like he was listening, but with his whole body. Then he nodded slowly. You sure? He said, voice quieter now. You look like you've got something to say, but your mouth and your heart are having a little disagreement. Ava exhaled. That was his way. He never pushed, just waited. She sat up a little straighter, brushing hair off her forehead. I went to Maison Elan, she said softly. The reservation was for 7. He nodded. I remember. You were so excited. That's your spot, right? The one you said feels like grown-up people power vibes? She smiled faintly. Yeah, That one. Her voice wavered. They said they couldn't find my reservation. I offered to show the confirmation. They didn't want to see it. Dwayne leaned back slightly, eyes still on her. No anger yet, no surprise, just quiet focus. Then what? They told me to try a burger place down the street, she said, blinking. They let people in right after me. No reservation. I heard them say it. Silence. They looked at me and saw a kid, she added. Or something else. Not someone who belonged. Her voice cracked there barely, just a small tremble. But Dwayne heard it, felt it. Still, he didn't move, didn't curse, didn't jump in. He let her finish. I don't know, she said finally. It's not a big deal. Just a stupid dinner. I was just proud, you know, and I wanted to feel that, but they made me feel small. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Ava stared at the floor. Dwayne stared at her. Then slowly, he leaned forward, rested his thick forearms on his knees. His face was calm, but there was a new stillness in his expression, like a lake before a storm. He exhaled once through his nose, then nodded. What was the host's name? He asked softly. I didn't catch it, she replied. Gray suit, thin, kinda polite but sharp. Dwayne nodded again. He wasn't writing anything down. He didn't need to. And you didn't say anything? He asked. Didn't pull the "my dad is Dwayne Johnson" card? Ava shook her head quickly. No, that's not who I want to be. His smile returned just for a second. That's why I'm so damn proud of you. Then silence again. But this time, it stretched longer. Dwayne sat there, eyes unfocused now, looking not at Ava, but past her, into a place in his memory only he could see. She recognized the look immediately. She'd seen it her whole life. When someone underestimated her, when someone disrespected his mother, when a studio lowballed a project because they didn't think The Rock was serious. It was the same look every time. Still, calm. But behind the eyes, machinery, gears turning, pressure building. He rubbed his jaw slowly. You know, he said finally, I used to walk into places like that with your grandma and watch people look her up and down like she was in the wrong movie. Ava stayed quiet. They didn't see the woman who raised me with $7 to her name, he continued. Didn't see the woman who worked the graveyard shift just to keep the lights on. They saw clothes, shoes, posture, a woman who didn't belong. He looked at her now. His voice didn't rise, but it deepened. I never forgot those looks, and I never will. Ava's eyes shimmered, just slightly. Dwayne leaned back. I'm glad you didn't tell them who you were, he said. You handled it with grace, with strength. Then his tone shifted, just a little. But they're still going to remember your name. In that moment, Ava understood something. Her dad didn't need to yell to make something happen. He didn't need a headline. He just needed the truth. And the look on his face now, steady, focused, restrained, told her everything she needed to know. Something had been set in motion, and once her father started moving, he didn't stop until the walls came down, or new ones were built. The house was silent. Ava was still asleep upstairs. Outside the windows of Dwayne's home, Los Angeles was just beginning to stir. A light blue dawn bleeding into the horizon, the palm trees casting thin shadows over the glass patio. Dwayne sat at the kitchen island, a mug of black coffee untouched in his hand. The gym was calling. The calendar was packed. But for now, none of that mattered. He stared at the marble countertop in silence, his phone face down beside him. He wasn't angry, not in the way people expected. No outbursts, no threats, no phone calls to agents or tabloids. He had learned long ago that power didn't live in volume. It lived in patience, precision, purpose. And right now, his purpose was crystal clear. He flipped the phone over and opened his notes app. Just a single word at the top. Maison Elan. Underneath it, he started typing, one slow line at a time. Who owns the restaurant? Parent company. Private investors. Hospitality group. Who trains the front staff? He stared at the screen, then added a final line. How many people have been turned away the same way? He didn't know the answers yet, but he would. The door to the kitchen opened, and his longtime assistant, Miles, walked in, holding 2 folders and an iPad. Miles had been with him for nearly a decade. He could read Dwayne's energy, the way a captain reads the sea. Morning, he said cautiously. You slept? Dwayne didn't look up, just nodded. Couple hours. I need your help with something. Of course. He handed over the phone. Start digging into that list. Miles scanned it. His eyes narrowed. You want everything on Maison Elan? Everything, Dwayne said. From the building owner to the guy who designed the table napkins. Miles gave a low whistle, but he didn't ask why. He knew. Dwayne sipped the coffee finally. It had gone cold. 3 hours later, Miles returned. He didn't bring the iPad this time, just a printed packet, stapled neatly. Thought you'd want this on paper, he said, placing it on the counter. Dwayne took it without a word. The top page read, Maison Elan, ownership tree. He flipped through it slowly. The restaurant was operated under a boutique hospitality label called Fleur Plus Group, specializing in high-end experiential dining. Fleur Plus Group was owned by a shell company registered in Nevada, with ties to luxury real estate investors based in Dubai. The building itself, owned by a Canadian real estate trust that leased properties exclusively to lifestyle concepts. It was a tangled web, one Dwayne had seen before. People talked about culture and community, but the decisions, the policies, the biases, the hiring, those came from boardrooms, and he was going to walk into one of those rooms. He set the packet down. Next step, he said. I want names, board members, major investors, managers, and I want to know who made the call on staff training and guest policies. Miles nodded, already typing into his phone. Dwayne stood, stretched his back, and looked out the window. The sun was up now. The day was beginning. But in his mind, he was still in that moment, on the call with Ava. Hearing the catch in her voice, the small break that only a father could hear. That was enough. He didn't want revenge. He didn't want headlines. What he wanted was a system change, something permanent, quiet, but unshakable. A door that couldn't be closed in someone's face again, not because of sneakers, not because of skin, not because they didn't look like money. Dwayne Johnson didn't want to burn the building down. He wanted to own the foundation. The morning shift at Maison Elan began the way it always did, in stillness. Before the first guests arrived, before the table candles were lit, before the stemware was placed, the restaurant breathed in silence. At exactly 9:30 a.m., the front doors opened with a soft mechanical click, and staff began trickling in one by one, each wearing the same uniform: crisp black slacks, deep navy aprons, hair pinned back, voices low, no perfume, no jewelry, no nail polish. The rules were strict. Luxury, they were told, begins with discipline. Theo was the youngest waiter on staff, 19. He had joined 3 months ago after moving from Oakland, trying to help cover his mother's medical bills while attending school part-time. He wasn't from this world. Not really. He didn't wear designer cologne, didn't own a single tailored shirt, but he was sharp, attentive, and quick to learn. That morning, as he tied his apron in the staff lounge, the air around him felt different, tighter, like something unsaid was hanging in the air. "Did you hear what happened last night?" someone whispered near the lockers. Theo glanced over. 2 hostesses, heads bowed. Their voices were hushed, but their faces were animated, concern masked with gossip. "Management called an emergency meeting for this afternoon," one of them said. "I heard it came from corporate." "No way. Corporate never gets involved unless someone dies or sues." "Well, something's going on." Theo walked into the main dining room and froze. There, sitting at one of the booths, sipping an espresso and tapping something into a tablet, was Madame Renee, the regional director of Fleur Plus Group. She never came unannounced, and she certainly didn't sit in the booths like a regular customer. She was dressed in all black, her platinum hair swept into a severe bun, her expression unreadable behind rimless glasses. Theo watched as the general manager, Mr. Langford, approached her with 2 other supervisors. He bowed slightly, spoke with his hands, kept glancing toward the front doors. Theo didn't need to hear the words. He had worked enough shifts to read body language. Something was wrong. Theo cleared a table near the window, the same table where Ava had stood the night before. He remembered it clearly. He had been across the room, polishing a champagne flute. He'd noticed her walk in, not because of anything flashy, but because of the way she carried herself. There was a kind of quiet excitement in her face, a glow, like she was proud of something, like this night mattered. He had watched the maitre d', Franz, shut her down in under 30 seconds. "No reservation." "Try somewhere else." "No, thank you. I don't need to see your confirmation." It had bothered Theo. Deeply. He'd almost stepped forward, just to say something. But he hadn't. Because at Maison Elan, stepping out of line meant stepping out the door. He remembered what another server once told him. "We're not paid to think. We're paid to obey." But still, it stayed with him. The look on the girl's face. Not angry, not indignant. Just wounded. Like the air had been let out of something sacred. Later that day, during the pre-service briefing, Madame Renee stood in front of the full staff. Her heels clicked against the tile as she moved slowly, her voice cold and precise. "We've received word that a high-profile guest was turned away last night, unknowingly and rudely." She didn't mention a name, but the staff exchanged glances. Theo felt his heart beat a little faster. Renee continued, "This is unacceptable, not because of who she is, but because of what we claim to be." She turned to Franz, the maitre d'. "There will be a temporary reassignment of duties." Franz blinked. I wasn't aware she was high profile." "That's the problem," Renee replied, her voice like ice. "You're not paid to assess status by appearance." Theo's eyes widened. They knew. They found out who she was. And now, someone big was watching. By the time the dinner shift began, The staff was buzzing, not aloud, but beneath the surface. Theo heard someone whisper in the kitchen. "You know who her dad is, right?" The Rock. Dwayne freaking Johnson. That guy could buy the building if he wanted. In the staff hallway, someone else muttered, "He already did. That's the rumor." It was ridiculous, right? But even Mr. Langford seemed different that evening, nervously checking his phone, peeking through the frosted doors toward the dining room. A waiter dropped a glass during service. No one laughed. No one spoke. It was like they were all waiting for something, some kind of reckoning. Theo moved from table to table, but his mind wasn't on orders. It was on her, Ava, and on what this place really stood for. Not luxury, not elegance, just performance. A curated experience designed to please those who looked the part. But what if someone finally stood up and said, "Enough"? Outside, a sleek black SUV rolled slowly to a stop across the street. The windows were tinted. The driver didn't get out, but Theo noticed, and he had a feeling. It was only the beginning. The next evening at Maison Elan began like any other, at least on the surface. The crystal glasses were spotless, the lights dimmed to their signature golden hue. Soft ambient jazz floated beneath the conversations of Los Angeles's elite. It was a Wednesday, but you wouldn't know it from the crowd. Actors, executives, influencers, and wealth too old for Instagram. The staff moved with practiced grace. No one ran, no one rushed. Every movement was choreography. But underneath it all, something buzzed, something unseen. Because word had spread, not officially, but enough. He might come tonight. He knows. He's watching. At exactly 7:42 p.m., the front doors opened. Not wide, not loud, just enough. And there he was, Dwayne Johnson in person, no entourage, no camera crew, no press. Just him. He wore a dark charcoal suit unbuttoned, a black dress shirt underneath, open at the collar, no tie, no flash, no smile. But even in silence, he filled the room like thunder before a storm. The maitre d', not Franz, who'd been reassigned, but a younger man, clearly new, looked up and froze. "Good evening, sir," he said, voice shaky. "Do you have a reservation?" Dwayne smiled, just barely. Not rude, not cold, just knowing. "No," he said. "I won't be dining." The host blinked. "Oh, would you like me to?" "I'm just here to walk," Dwayne said. And with that, he stepped inside. Not rushed, not loud. He walked slowly, hands at his sides, eyes scanning the room with quiet intensity. The conversations at surrounding tables began to hush, one by one. Not because he was famous. That part was expected in this part of town, but because of the way he carried himself. He wasn't there to eat, or pose, or perform. He was taking measure of the people, the room, the culture. Theo was standing by table 9 when he saw him. Their eyes met, just for a moment. And in that instant, Theo felt something he couldn't describe. Not fear, not awe. Something else. Recognition. Dwayne gave a slight nod, almost imperceptible. Theo nodded back. No words, but something passed between them. "I saw what happened. I know you did. We're not done here." Dwayne moved past the bar, past the champagne carts, past the corner booth where Ava had stood smiling, full of hope. He paused there, just for a breath. The staff didn't approach him. The diners didn't interrupt. Even the kitchen fell still, the clatter of dishes and knives softening to silence. In a building built on performance, Dwayne Johnson's silence was louder than any headline. He walked once around the room, a full loop, not hurried, not searching. Then, without a word, he turned and exited the way he came. For the next hour, no one at Maison Elan could concentrate. The maitre d' dropped his earpiece while taking a reservation. A wine steward mixed up the bottles at table 4. One of the hosts fumbled the pronunciation of Coquille Saint-Jacques. Everyone had the same thought in the back of their mind. What now? In the staff hallway, Theo stood by the lockers, still replaying that moment. That nod. He knew something had shifted, not just for Ava, not just for Dwayne, but maybe for every single person who'd ever been turned away by a velvet rope, a polite smile, and a quiet judgment. That night, Maison Elan served $27,000 worth of food, but no one remembered the taste. They only remembered the moment a man walked in, said nothing, and left them trembling. The video wasn't scheduled. It wasn't announced. It simply appeared at 6:47 a.m. the next morning. No title, no hashtags, no fanfare. Just a still thumbnail. Dwayne Johnson sitting in a wooden chair on his back patio. The morning sky behind him was soft with mist. A cup of coffee rested on the table beside him. He looked tired. Not physically, emotionally. The kind of tired you feel after carrying something quietly for too long. The video was 2 minutes and 31 seconds long. It would go on to be shared over 9 million times within 48 hours. But none of that mattered yet. Right now, it was just him and the camera. He looked straight ahead. "Good morning," he began. "This isn't a post. It's not a takedown. It's not about canceling anyone." A pause. It's about something deeper, something quieter, but something that still hurts when it happens, especially to the people we love. He inhaled, slowly, thoughtfully. "Yesterday I visited a place. Not to make a scene, just to feel the space, to breathe in what it meant. Because someone close to me, someone I love more than anything, walked into that place the night before and walked out feeling small. Not because of what she did, but because of what someone assumed she wasn't." Another pause. Longer this time. You could hear birds in the background, the wind brushing faintly through the trees. My daughter Ava didn't throw a fit. She didn't name drop her father. She didn't post a video. She walked away with dignity, because that's how I raised her. That's how her mother raised her. His voice shifted here, just slightly. A softness entering, but also steel. But I've been that kid before. I've walked into places and seen the calculation in someone's eyes. The scan from shoes to shirt to skin. That half second of judgment before the smile appears. And let me tell you something. It stays with you. He looked down, then back up. This isn't about revenge. It's about reminding all of us, especially those of us in rooms of influence, that luxury means nothing if it comes at the cost of someone's humanity. Dignity is not a reward. It's a right. So here's what I'm doing. A small breeze passed, the sound of a coffee cup being lifted. We're building something, quietly, carefully, but permanently. Not to punish, to educate, to empower, to create spaces where no one has to wonder if they're being seen through or seen at all. He leaned forward slightly. I'm not going to name the place. I don't need to. That's not the point. The point is that the world is watching, not to tear down, but to build better. Better businesses, better leaders, better standards. He smiled then, just barely, but it reached his eyes. Because no daughter of mine, or yours, or anyone's, should ever feel like they're not enough. Fade to black. The silence after the video hit the internet didn't last long. At first, it was just comments. This is what leadership looks like. Cried watching this. Been that girl. He didn't name names, but he named the problem. Then came the shares. By noon, the video was being played on news segments, podcast intros, school morning announcements. Not because it was scandalous, because it was true. At Maison Elan, panic bloomed behind the scenes. Managers huddled in back rooms. Executives called emergency Zoom meetings. PR firms scrambled to draft statements. But it was too late for spin, because the world wasn't angry. It was awake, and they weren't focused on Maison Elan anymore. They were thinking about the time they were judged by their shoes, the night they got seated by the bathroom, the job interview where no one made eye contact, the store they were followed in, the silence after the door closed. Ava sat on the floor of her bedroom, laptop on her knees, still wearing pajamas. She hadn't known about the video. She watched it alone. At one point, she pressed pause, her hand over her mouth, not because she was embarrassed, but because she hadn't realized until then how deeply her father had listened, how much he had felt it. Her tears weren't sad. They were proud and full. She opened her phone. Messages from friends, classmates, even strangers. Thank you for sharing that story. I've never felt seen like that before. You're not alone. And for the first time in 2 days, she smiled, fully, openly, and without hesitation. Not because she had a victory, but because her pain had turned into something bigger, something healing. The world didn't change overnight, but something had shifted. A story had been told, and once told, it couldn't be unheard. It began quietly. No press conference, no ribbon cutting, no red carpet, just a soft announcement tucked at the bottom of Dwayne's website under a tab called Projects I Believe in. The Open Door Initiative. A space where power holds the door open. No flashy mission statement. No celebrity endorsements. Just a promise to help people, especially young people, step into rooms they were never invited into and make sure they feel like they belong once they're there. Behind the scenes, the project had already been moving for weeks. Dwayne had called old friends, former teammates, studio heads, luxury hotel owners, Michelin-starred chefs, startup founders, coaches, principals, dreamers, and asked one question. Will you open a door? Not just figuratively, literally. One restaurateur agreed to host etiquette dinners for teens from underserved schools. A VC firm created a paid internship program for students without Ivy League degrees. A fashion house started accepting applications from design students with no formal training, only a portfolio and a story. It wasn't about lowering standards. It was about redefining the way we assess worth. The first Open Door event took place at a rooftop restaurant in downtown LA. 30 students from across the city, inner-city schools, foster programs, GED grads, walked through the same kinds of doors that once turned them away. Theo was there, not as a waiter, as a guest speaker. Dwayne had reached out after the visit to Maison Elan. He wanted to hear what Theo had seen, what he had felt, what he had swallowed down quietly to keep a paycheck. Theo told the truth, and Dwayne listened, then invited him to help design the very program that would empower others to walk in, chin up. That night, As the sun set over the skyline, something beautiful happened. A 16-year-old girl from Compton asked a retired chef from Paris what wine paired with duck. A boy in a borrowed suit made his first elevator pitch to a producer from HBO. A waiter, long since invisible, was applauded for his story instead of ignored for his silence. No cameras, no selfies, just people, sharing space. Weeks later, on a quieter night, Ava returned to Maison Elan. Not because she wanted revenge, because she wanted closure. This time, she didn't go alone. She brought 3 girls with her, seniors from her old school. Each of them had faced their own versions of being unseen. They walked in together. No hesitation. A new host greeted them at the door. "Welcome," he said warmly. "We've been expecting you." Ava smiled. This time, it reached all the way to her heart. They were seated near the front window, the same spot she'd been turned away from weeks before. But now, it wasn't about the table. It was about the voice she found that day, and how many others it had awakened. She ordered sparkling water. They laughed about how weird the appetizer names were. One of the girls asked if they could take home the bread. It was perfect. At the end of the meal, a note was slipped under Ava's plate. It wasn't from management. It wasn't from her father. It was handwritten. Sloppy, a little smudged. "Thanks for walking through the door first. Some of us didn't even know it was locked until you opened it." She blinked, looked around, saw a young hostess nearby, eyes flicking away quickly. Ava smiled again, and just like that, something came full circle. Not with anger, not with destruction, but with quiet power and grace. The Open Door initiative spread faster than anyone expected, not because it was loud, but because it was true. Soon, restaurants in Chicago, hotels in Atlanta, startups in Oakland, law firms in Boston. People were calling, asking to be part of it, to sponsor tables, host workshops, offer mentorships. The phrase "open door partner" began to appear on storefronts, discreet golden lettering near the entrance. Not as a badge of honor, as a promise, a signal that said, "You are welcome here. You are enough. Come in." Dwayne never bragged about it, never pushed it in interviews. But sometimes, when he was driving past one of those restaurants, or watching Ava speak at a university, or listening to Theo introduce a speaker at an open door gala, he would smile. Not the Hollywood smile, the real one. The one from long ago, when he was a kid with no money, watching his mother walk into rooms that didn't see her. Now, the rooms were different, because he helped build them. And it all began with a table that wasn't set for them, until they pulled up a chair anyway, and stayed. For all of us.